when you're ready.
My investigative question is, how does climate change impact biodiversity? Climate change decreases biodiversity resilience as it alters the distribution and interaction between organisms. Climate change refers to the long-term shifts in temperature and weather patterns, mainly caused by humans due to the release of greenhouse gases such as CO2, which pollute the atmosphere. Global anthropogenic emissions are endangering all forms of life, causing high rates of species extinction for unnecessary reasons. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration officials state, there is more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere now than at any time in the last 4 million years. As a result of the peak of CO2 emissions, effects are being displayed worldwide and the planet continues to warm. The increase in temperature has led to natural disasters, shifts in species' geographical range, and evolution, all of which have caused high rates of species extinction, ultimately decreasing biodiversity. Biodiversity refers to the variety of life on Earth at all its levels, from microorganisms to mammals. It is fundamental to the planet as it helps ensure the security of both the environment and all species within it, providing the necessary resources for the survival of all forms of life. Biodiversity is made up of 3 features, which include the total number of species, the number of endemic species, and the genetic diversity of a species, all within an ecosystem. The greater the amount and the more intertwined these features are, the more resilient an ecosystem will be in the face of adverse environments such as climate change. Therefore, ensuring that a wide variety of species thrive in the environment is crucial in a time such as now. Climate change has a direct effect on biodiversity, as the natural disasters that have occurred have shown a devastating impact on the ecosystem and organisms on Earth. Natural disasters have caused organisms and their habitat to be destroyed, leading to a decrease in species population. In 2019 to 2020, record-breaking temperatures and severe drought in Australia caused widespread bushfires, decimating an estimated 500 million mammals, birds, reptiles, and insects. Such places of high biodiversity are limited and cannot be found anywhere else. This emphasizes their value and the importance of preserving these areas to ensure that no further damage occurs. As there becomes less variety in population, species will be much less successful in adapting to environmental changes, and the Earth will continue to become less biodiverse. Climatic factors have a significant role in determining the geographic ranges of species. As temperatures increase, species may be forced to relocate to areas where the climate is suitable, which will be higher in elevation as the temperature will be cooler. This movement of plants and animals to higher altitudes causes the organisms from the original ecosystem location that depend on them for survival to become extinct. This is due to a failure in symbiosis. Robert Beyer, a research analyst for Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, estimated that species have lost an average of 18% of their natural habitat ranges, and 16% of species have lost over half of their natural habitat. The interconnectedness between species is necessary for an ecosystem to function properly. Therefore, as species become separated in an ecosystem, the biodiversity in that region will become less resilient. This is a major issue, as ecosystems need to be resilient in order to survive and return to its original state when faced with environmental challenges. As observed by Eric Bender in Urban Evolution, How Species Adapt to Survive in Cities, species have begun to evolve and adapt to new urban environments differently than in rural areas. This urban environment is creating a new and unusual ecosystem. Cities have low levels of biodiversity, as urban environments produce the highest amounts of greenhouse gases and are consumed by buildings, roads, and cars, leaving limited room for green space. The high emissions of fossil fuels in industrial areas have led to an increase in temperature, forcing organisms in the area to evolve, such as the water flea Daphnia magna. This crustacean has evolved by developing traits such as tolerance to water temperature due to the effects of climate change, such as pollution and heat. These crustaceans play a vital ecological role as they prevent toxic bacteria present in ponds and serve as a food source for tadpoles and small fish. The adaptations the crustaceans are displaying could prove to have an impact on the rest of the freshwater ecosystem, as other species may not be able to be as successful in adapting to this new urban environment. The crustacean's evolution may not coincide with the rest of the interconnected species within the ecosystem it is a part of. This makes it difficult for the ecosystem to function in a healthy way, furthermore decreasing its resilience. My solution is connected to the artifact, How to Build a Resilient Future Using Ancient Wisdom by Julia Watson. This artifact discusses the indigenous technologies utilized by cultures from centuries past, which are still being continued today. The cultures which use this technology experience severe environmental challenges similar to climate change, such as frequent flooding and drought. Indigenous peoples have direct ties to the land and carry the knowledge from centuries past on how to allow nature to prosper and the steps necessary to combat environmental crisis. Julia Watson states that in Australia, where natives perform fire-stick farming in forests, trees that burned due to wildfires were saved as a result of this native technique. This indicates that the world needs the ancient technology utilized by indigenous peoples in order to preserve the environment and overcome the consequences of climate change. Another example can be seen in Washington, where the Swinomish tribe is reviving the centuries-old clam garden that has been used along the West Coast. This clam garden has been shown to increase clam population and provide food protection for indigenous communities. Partnering with these native communities can give insight on what can be done to prevent the ongoing decrease in biodiversity. Indigenous technologies have shown to increase biodiversity, while modern technologies may have the opposite effect. Indigenous people tend to think ahead to generations, taking note of the long-term impacts. We can implement these ancient methods and techniques throughout the world to take a step closer to preserve and increase biodiversity across the earth. The structures and techniques are incredibly sustainable and last for centuries. While modern technology may damage nature, these ancient methods are in tune with it, allowing an ecosystem to become more resilient to environmental disasters and shifts. Limitations can be seen within the use of ancient technology, such as the length it takes to build these structures, as it can be time-consuming. It can take many years to build these, and society typically looks for immediate results and often only focuses on the economic aspect. Another downfall may be differences in climate and environmental surroundings. Lastly, assimilation policies have caused many tribes to lose their connections to the land and ties to the environment, causing trauma and cultural loss. Julia Watson states, "In our rush towards the future, we often forget the past. The world continues to grow in development and industrialization, leaving limited room for species to survive, and biodiversity will deteriorate. The future of biodiversity is dependent on the measures society as a whole choose to take in order to reduce the global temperature. By ignoring nature and continuing in the trajectory of our ways, life on Earth will continue to decline. Rather than focusing on creating a more advanced world by destruction of nature, society should search for ways to improve the Earth through the use of ancient technology, reversing the damage that has been done."
I'll use GarageBand at like a huge.
Yeah.
All right. A couple of questions. How did your research question evolve as you moved through the research process?
My research question drastically changed as I moved through the research process. I knew I wanted to form a question that had relevance to today's society, having real-world implications. And at first, my question was going to be about how COVID affected the healthcare system's healthcare resilience. After researching this topic, I found that it wasn't very interesting to me, and I didn't really connect with it. And I knew it would be difficult to spend so much time on a topic that didn't connect with me. So I started to brainstorm current topics or issues that I care about and thought of climate change. And keeping this in mind, I reanalyzed the artifacts that I was given, and I found a common theme between biodiversity and climate change, leading me to form my final solution and question.
Okay, thank you. Another question. What additional questions emerged from your research, and why are they important?
A question that emerged from my research was, how do certain mental attitudes affect people's action towards climate control? And I became curious about this as I found that many people choose to be oblivious or aren't concerned with the current situation of climate change. And learning about how Indigenous people focus on the long-term impacts and the future of generations, I thought about how much American society is just strongly focused on the present, and many people choose not to concern themselves. Many people choose not to concern themselves with the effects of climate change or think about the future of the planet and people and the people and organisms that will be living on it. And another question that emerged from my research was, how have modern technologies impacted the environment? This question is important because due to its prevalence in today's society as technology advances day after day, but whether these advances have a positive or negative impact on the environment is important to consider.